Greetings. I am Desiree Smith, Chief Information Officer in the Department of Information and Public Relations, and I am pleased to welcome His Excellency the Governor, Augustus J.U. Jaspert, to share about his portfolio so that we all can get greater clarity on his role as Governor in the Virgin Islands. Your Excellency, welcome.
Thank you very much.
First, why does the territory need an office of the governor or the governor, and how does the governor support the needs of the territory?
Yes, thank you. So the role of the governor really stems from the Constitution, the basis of how the territory has decided it wants to be. As a British territory, it's chosen to have Her Majesty the Queen as head of state, and a constitution that places a modern partnership in terms of running the territory. That modern partnership I see in a way, it's a bit like a four-legged table, that there's different aspects to each of those legs. There's the role of the governor, myself, set out in the Constitution. There's the role of the elected government, led by obviously the Premier and his ministers. Then there's the public service and the core institutions, and there's also the United Kingdom. It all works as a modern partnership, and now, like a table, if any of those legs are wobbly in any way or not all working together in partnership, then that's a wobbly table. So the Constitution places the governor as constitutionally the head of government, but working very much in partnership with all of those elements that make a success for the territory.
Oh, that's interesting. So the responsibilities of the governor are what? The actual outworking that the governor takes care of?
Yes. So in the Constitution, the governor's role is to be Her Majesty's representative. That's the first part. That is Her Majesty as the head of state of the territory of the British Virgin Islands. The governor is constitutionally the head of government. Now, the aim and the approach, and always has been for each constitutional review, has to be to increase the self-determination of the territory, and the governor to support that along each way. So as constitutionally head of government, many of the areas of day-to-day business of government are then devolved to the elected ministers, be that the Premier or the portfolios. Some of those areas, what in the Constitution are called Section 60 areas, are areas that are not devolved and stay the responsibility of the governor. Those include internal security, things like the police, shared responsibility on the prisons. It includes external affairs, or there are certain areas where those are devolved to the Premier for Caribbean and regional issues. Administration of the public service as well, in terms of all of the public servants that we have in the territory. Good governance and the rule of law, so administration of the courts as a core part of that as well. So some of the core principles of areas which are deliberately non-political, and we have a system where the public service serves the government, the elected government of the day, delivers the policies of the day, but as an impartial, non-political public service. And the governor has a role across all areas of government in partnership, and then some of those are specifically constitutionally sort of responsibilities as set out.
So what does it mean then for you to have oversight of the courts, for example, as one of those roles that the governor maintains?
Yes. So some of those roles that the governor maintains are quite hands-on. Some are where actually the role of the governor is to support the institutions. So the courts are obviously, judicial decisions are independent. The courts operate rightly so with no interference in the decisions of the court. But the administration and ensuring that there is fair, transparent, effective justice in the territory is something that is important for me. Now, I discharge that duties by the various different institutions, be that the appointment of judges, which goes through advice of what's called the JLSC, the Judicial and Legal Services Council, and the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court supports that. The Director of Public Prosecutions, for example, who heads up the prosecutorial side, the Attorney General as the government's chief lawyer, the police, and the police commissioner reporting to me, but again the police commissioner is operationally independent. So the governor would and can't and never should tell the police who to arrest or how to run an operation. That's how the police should do. Similarly, I would never tell a judge what a sentence should be, or no one should. That's for them, on the basis of what happens in the court for the judge or the jury to decide. But the administration of those areas means how do we make sure they are efficient, effective, fair, transparent, and operate to the rule of law. Some of the areas that the governor is responsible for are more hands-on or have been more hands-on. Disaster management is one of those which, in my time here, has been more hands-on than anyone would have ever prayed for because of the experience that we had. But all of it is about a partnership across all of those different areas that make BVI such a success.
Thank you. As chairman of the cabinet, which is the ministers and the premier of government,
yes.
Are you able to vote at the cabinet meetings?
No, so the governor is, I chair cabinet. Alongside in cabinet there are, as you say, the premier and each of the cabinet ministers. There's also 2 junior ministers who don't attend cabinet but do hold junior minister responsibilities. And cabinet is the top decision-making policy body before the House of Assembly. So the House of Assembly is obviously where laws are taken, but cabinet is the top executive body for the government. In there, my role is to facilitate good discussions, to try to bring out the best of the policies, to sometimes challenge and question and to ask and to ensure that things are meeting the rule of law, that are being thought through, that we get advice from the Financial Secretary, the Attorney General, cross-ministry consultation is being taken account of. But ultimately the policies of the government of the day, or the elected government of the day, are for the elected government of the day, the Premier and his ministers, to justify and to hold themselves publicly accountable. The Governor doesn't have a vote on those, but there are certain areas, as I talked about earlier, which are reserved to the Governor in terms of things like defence, security, the courts, etc. But at Cabinet, the basis of Cabinet is collective decision making and making the best decisions for the interests of the territory.
So what then of your consultation with the Premier, you and the Premier
Yes.
directly one-on-one? What are generally those matters and how often do those take place?
Yes. Well, everything is about a partnership. The Premier and I talk very often. We obviously have formal meetings, the Cabinet. We have a National Security Council where we discuss national security issues. We co-chair the NDMC, the National Disaster Management Council, when we look at disaster management issues. So there's certain formal times when we will sit down and we will bring all the issues together. But obviously regularly we will be discussing all of the issues of how do we make sure the territory is a success, it's moving forward, we're improving the lives of everybody in the territory. The Constitution sets out certain areas where formally I consult, so decisions, for example, on senior public appointments. Those are for the Governor to take, often on advice of whether that's the Public Service Commission or other commissions. But the Constitution also asks me to then consult with the Premier as well on some of those. So there's a mixture of obviously set meetings, formal arrangements for how we consult, but the basis of all of it is a partnership of mutual respect to all achieve the best we can for this fantastic territory.
Thank you for that, Governor. You mentioned from the beginning that you are Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's representative here in the territory. What does that actually mean?
It's a good question. So, Her Majesty the Queen is the head of state for the British Virgin Islands, just the same as she is the head of state for the United Kingdom as well. What that means on a practical level is that I, as Governor, am her representative here, but it means that also her interest here is about BVI. She's the head of state, and my interest here is about the British Virgin Islands. I don't work to the UK government, I work to the Crown, and all public servants in the territory actually work to the Crown. They are Crown servants. The Crown's interest is to serve the people of the territory, and that's what my warrant, my mandate, is to serve the interests of the territory. Now that's done in the ways I talked about, working in partnership with the government. It's done with certain responsibilities that I hold. It's done with certain local laws which set out certain areas where I have specific responsibilities. And it's done with the public service and the other core institutions that we work with. But essentially it is a recognition that the territory has chosen to remain British, chosen to have the Queen as, or Her Majesty as, head of state, and that power then locally is vested, authority is invested in me as Governor, alongside all of the other elements that make the partnership a success.
Your office, the Office of the Governor, is broken into 2 key areas, that being the staff that is the BVI government and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office staff.
Yes.
How are those different, and do you operate differently with those 2 groups?
So I have a team that, it's a small office. but we have, as you say, we have a team who are paid for by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and paid for by the government of the Virgin Islands. So it's sort of, but very, very clear, and everybody when they join, they get a letter from me that says you may be paid by different paycheck, but you're one team. And the one team is to support the British Virgin Islands. There's no distinction across anybody across the team, whatever role they have. Every day we walk into that office, whether that's me or whether it's anybody in the team, we have the best jobs in the world, because our sole mission when we walk through the door into the office is to think, how do we support the territory? How do we improve the territory for the long term? How do we work best in partnership? How do we work openly, transparently? How do we support every individual person in this territory to succeed and thrive? So whilst the paycheck may come from a different area, the mission is the same across the office.
You were often called on by the people of the territory, Governor, and if we think back to 2017, to address a number of things in the community that generally should be handled by the government. How do you respond when things like that happen?
So I do get a lot of people coming to my office or writing to me. There's a number of things. So firstly, actually my office will direct them to the correct authority now. Normally that is a ministerial responsibility, through either the permanent secretary or directly to the minister's office. Sometimes it can be things that the institutions of state need to deal with. So there can sometimes be a bit of a mindset that an audience with the governor, or a chat with the governor, or however it's termed, is going to solve everything. And all people need to do is get 10 minutes with the governor and tell him, this is what's gone wrong in my life, and the governor will solve it. Actually, what I want to put the priority on is building up the institutions of the territory so that they are fully transparent. People have equality in terms of how they're treated by them, and people know how to go. So if they've got a complaint against a service, we have a complaints commissioner. How does that complaints commissioner deal with that? If they can't get a service from the public service, how do we make that reform the public service to make sure that the public service is delivering for them? If they feel they've been victimised in a certain way, how do the police support them and make sure that they're comfortable? There's further institutions that we need to build to, in a way, take off the pressure from the governor, not just because I want a quieter life, but actually it's important for the territory itself that as we keep supporting more and more self-determination, we build up those institutions. So having, for example, things like an integrity commission. People shouldn't be coming to the governor and saying, I don't think this is right. Go to an appointed body who can actually investigate, look at it and do it in the correct way. Don't come to the governor and say, I want this information. Get a freedom of information request and get it out. Let's have transparent, accountable government. We've done certain things, like with the previous government, put in place making cabinet decisions public, so people can see, how is government operating for you, what decisions are they making. And those improvements, whilst I often talk about transparency, accountability and good governance, those improvements are really about how do we serve the public best? How do we make sure that the public get a good service, get fair equal treatment by any of the public agencies dealing with, can complain and be redressed. They may not always be right, but they have a fair route and a transparent route to do that, and they can understand the workings of government, and it shouldn't be reliant on that chat with the governor to sort something out. It should be institutionally working very strongly. We have a lot of that in place. There's more we can do to move that forward as well.
I hear the terms partnership and good and fair, transparent, egalitarian benefit across the board coming from you.
Yes, indeed.
Governor, you remember 22nd August 2017? Do you remember that date?
I do. A few things happened after that, but I do still remember.
Yes. Well, that date was the date you were sworn in as governor.
Yes.
And in your statement, you made certain commitments to the people of the territory.
My commitment as governor is to serve and to work in partnership to make the Virgin Islands an even better place, an even more prosperous, safe and well-governed place, a place that is valued for the important part it plays internationally, and a place that creates even greater potential for its future, in particular through its young people as the future generation. I will serve with integrity, fairness and impartiality. I want to be approachable and part of the community and will listen to all views and want to support the institutions of these islands to own and tackle any challenges. I will be engaged, but I will not shy away from acting where the values of fairness, security, and good governance are not at the highest standards. As a people of such talent and strength, these islands should rightly expect the highest standards.
Do you remember those, and how have you gotten along in those commitments?
Yes, no, I definitely do remember them, and I thought very long and hard before making what I assume you refer to my swearing-in speech, which was on day 2 of arriving. Day 1, I got off the plane and went to see the flooding, which we just had the August floods. In fact, I remember someone saying to me when I went to see the flooding, "Don't worry, Governor, that's the worst flooding for 50 years. You won't have any natural disasters in your time here." And then 2 weeks later, sadly, we had obviously the hurricanes. So my swearing-in speech, I talked quite a lot about how I see the role of Governor, which is really about service. A lot of things that I set out that I would like to, and have been working with both the previous and the current government on to support the Territory moving forward. As ever, when you have a plan, it's Mike Tyson who said, "No plan survives the first punch." In my first couple of weeks, the priority turned very quickly to the horrific hurricanes that we had in September 2017, which was, I think, 2 weeks from the day I arrived. Obviously, we had Hurricane Irma. So my priorities switched, but stayed the same in a way as well. So that the priorities of making sure that I operate with service and partnership, that we keep moving forward with transparency, accountability, building up even stronger good governance and a stronger public service, has stayed the same. I can talk through some of the things that have happened on that. But also a priority was, after the storms, to make sure that we immediately have a good response, to make sure that we don't have anybody suffering after the storms, or that we secure the Territory in terms of the security response. And we've done a lot to increase the police force, to learn the lessons of those horrific events in 2017. We've got support from the United Kingdom to fund and train and our police officers in various different ways as well. Repair our prison, a whole host of different areas that we've had to do on the security side. To support the economy and the financial services, and there's been various challenges internationally around that, and working with the Premier, both former and current, to support those areas. So there's a whole hurricane response side of it, but actually the priorities of improving the long-term good governance of the Territory is something that's also stayed core. So with the Deputy Governor, we launched a public service transformation programme, which I know the Deputy Governor has talked quite a lot about, but this is really, really core to making sure that our public service is an enabler and a catalyst for a successful economy and for supporting all of the people in the Territory. Getting public service more digital, transforming customer service standards, looking at the operations across various ministries and how we can make them as effective and as efficient as they can for world-class public service. We've also, with the support of both the former and the current government, taken forward new approaches to improve the transparency and accountability and good governance. Getting cabinet decisions public was one of the things that I was very keen to do with the former government. That came through, but has continued with this government. Working on a Public Service Management Act, including whistleblowing protection, looking at an Integrity Commission Act or Integrity Act to bring forward proposals for how some of those institutions are built up as well. That's something with the new government, or well, not so new now, but with the current government, working fully in partnership with to take forward and keep moving on those areas of improving the institutions and good governance of the Territory.
Well, Governor, thank you so much. You've given us a lot of information in this very short period of time, but it's very, very helpful in us knowing a bit more about your role as Governor here in the Territory.
My pleasure. No, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So we're grateful to have had this opportunity to sit with His Excellency the Governor, Agustus J.U. Jaspert, and now we know just a little bit more about the role and the office of the Governor. Thank you.